The weather is getting warmer, and there's golf season currently in swing right now with the Masters this week. But you're kind of getting that feeling of we're excited for golf, but at the same time, we're going to concerts, we're going to golf tournaments, but you can't help getting that feeling of, oh, we need football back, and miss being up in those stadiums with friends and family, and the environments and the chaos, and you never know what's going to happen in college football. So it's Masters week, but um, here the offseason we're really starting to feel our missing of football and not having football on Saturdays on TV, and uh, kind of really wants to get you going for the 2026 season. But we're only about 20 weeks away from the first game of the season, so it's going to be coming up quick. And one of the topics that we're going to be talking about today, two of the topics is we're going to talk about overrated and underrated teams for the 2026 college football season. I've got my list. It's going to be 3-3, three underrated teams for 2026, three overrated teams for 2026. And we're going to go through those, and we're going to get your thoughts and feedback, as well as any comments that you can leave below. This season is going to be interesting. There's lots of change, lots of new coaches. With particularly, with Ole Miss and LSU having new coaches, in that whole situation. So it's you got somebody like Clemson that Dabo's kind of going up and down. How are they going to be? How is Alabama going to be with Kalen DeBoer? Is he going to be able to figure it out after winning the playoff game versus Oklahoma and then getting smashed by Indiana? What are they going to be like? There's lots of changes. You have teams like Oregon that return their quarterbacks, or you've got teams that return quarterbacks that you're expecting to be good, but we saw what happened in 2025 with Penn State and Clemson. We expected them to be good with a lot of returning starters, and they weren't so hot. So it'll be very interesting, and this is what I kind of want to get into is how are these teams going to perform based off of what we think or what people think, and what are going to be some of the letdowns, and what are going to be some of the teams that overachieve that maybe we're not all the way looking into that could outperform on some of those expectations. And let's start with the overrated teams. The overrated teams, in my opinion, are going to be Oregon, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss. We will start with Oregon. And the reason I'm going to say Oregon, in my opinion, is let's talk about Oregon. They lost 5 offensive linemen to the draft / the portal. They returned Dante Moore. They've got some key pickups with Corey Perch from Minnesota, who's a safety. They lost offensive weapons like their tight end, Keon Sadiq, who's probably going to be a first rounder. He's a really good player for them this year. And they've got players coming in like Jalen Lott, who's a former 5-star. He's got a lot of upside. Here's the thing with Oregon. They're unproven on the offensive line and the defensive backs as well. That, like I said, they lost 5 offensive linemen to the draft / the portal. So that would be one of the reasons I'm kind of iffy on Oregon. I'm not sold on them, guys. I'm really not. Dante Moore was good. He didn't play outstanding, in my opinion, versus really good competition. Their schedule is tougher this year. I mean, it is not that they had an easy schedule last year, but they, kind of they beat a Penn State team that no one thought that, people thought they were going to be really good. So I'm just not sold. Like, I'm just not. I can't. Their offensive line's iffy. I think they're going to be good. But when they're right now, they're like the preseason, they're like number 2 or number 3 is what people are expecting them. They're like highest odds to win the national championship. I don't see that. They're just not good enough, in my opinion. I think they lost too much. I don't think that Dante Moore is going to be – he's going to need some help. How protected is he going to be? I mean, I'm looking at their schedule right now. They play at USC on September 26th. They play at Ohio State on November 7th. They play Michigan, and then they play Washington. So those are their big games that are going to be tough. And then they've got out Illinois, which ain't easy. And and then they've got Nebraska at home, which they should be solid. So like they're not their schedule's not a cakewalk. I think they might go 9-3, 10-2, but for them to be like a lock for the championship or even like the top four, I don't see it. They're just not there to me. I don't think they're going to be able to beat some of these teams that are going to be able to put pressure on Dante Moore. I think that what's going to end up happening is they're not going to be able to protect him quite as well as they thought, and I think they're going to struggle running the football, in my opinion. So let's talk about some of their additions. They got the safeties, like I talked about. They got another safety from Baylor, Carl Williams. They got a receiver from UAB, Iverson Hooks. So they've got some good players coming in. Also, obviously, the big news is Dylan Raiola comes in. So he is going to be the backup for Dante Moore this year, kind of doing what Dante Moore did, taking that year to go to a better school under a better coach in Dan Lanning and develop and learn under Dante Moore to probably take over in 2027. So that was big news. Kind of odd he left a pretty good Big Ten school to go to be a backup at another Big Ten school. But that's the way it is in this day and age, in the era. You can go make $1 million and still be a backup quarterback and develop and get better at Oregon. And in his head, he probably thinks they're gonna, be really, really good the next 2 years, which they will be. But I just don't see them being a national championship team. I think that Dante Moore will progress from year 1 to year 2 as a starter, but I don't see him being like a top 2 quarterback in the country. I just think that he's really good, but he's mobile enough, but he's not gonna like scare you. And I think that if they have the offensive line struggles with some of those players leaving, then that could, hurt them down the stretch. Let's move on. We're going to move on right along, and we're going to go to the next team that I think is overrated, and that is the Texas A&M Aggies. I have the Texas A&M Aggies overrated for the 2026 season. You're going to ask why. Well, here's my reason why. The Aggies are going to be replacing 4 offensive line starters. They have only 12 combined starts. The people that are returning for Texas A&M on the offensive line, they do get back Marcel Reed. They lost 13 starters in total to the NFL. A&M did. They had a really stacked team. They were really good defensively. They had a couple of really stud D linemen that were just unbelievable. They lost Le'Veon Moss, who went to the NFL. They also lost both the OC and their DC, if I'm not mistaken. Let's double check that. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they lost. They lost their OC and their DC. So yeah, you've got the new offensive coordinator is going to be Harlem Wiggins, because Colin Klein left to take the head coaching job at Kansas State. So he's been at Alabama, but I don't care, man. When Colin Klein leaves, he was an amazing offensive coordinator for the Aggies. Works really well with Marcel Reed. It's going to be interesting to see how Coach Wiggins can coordinate and plan around Marcel Reed, because Marcel Reed has got to take a step forward. If they're going to be like a top 5 team, he was really good in 2025 at times, but he was kind of up and down. In the South Carolina game, they didn't play well in the first half, and in the second half, they just, let it go, and they score a bunch of points, 20 points in the second half, and end up pulling off the crazy upset, or not the upset, the crazy comeback versus South Carolina, which, big shocker, they blew it. Moving on back to A&M. They also lost their coordinator. The new coordinator is going to be Lyle Hifflum, and he was the assistant head coach, and he was replacing Jay Bateman, who went to Kentucky, which was kind of crazy that the DC left for Kentucky. So, but this new coordinator, Coach Hemphill, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, is worked with Mike Elgo before. They were at Duke together. He was at James Madison as well. So this is kind of more of a I kind of feel better about the defense than I do the offense if I'm Texas A&M. I trust Mike Elko on defense. He's going to figure defense out. That's not my concern for the Aggies this year. It's going to be more of the offense. But let's talk about what they added really quickly. They added Isaiah Horton. They added a couple offensive linemen from Wilkin Formby from Alabama as well. Isaiah Horton was with Alabama. They had Ray Coney, a linebacker from Tulsa, an edge from Northwestern, and Tosaka, who had 8.5 sacks last year. So they're going to be good on defense. I just really want to know how good they're going to be on the offensive line and how good play calling is going to be with Marcel Reed. And is he going to be able to take that next step to read coverages, dissect the defense, and really, really push this A&M offense to be a top 5 team? Because they were really good at times, but when they played good teams, there was kind of an up and down, even when they played bad teams. Like we played South Carolina, who was not very good last year. So they lost versus Texas, So it's just going to be interesting to see if Marcel Reed does not take that next step. I mean, you can say that about a lot of teams. If he doesn't take that next step, they've got to have good quarterback play. Got to have good quarterback play in 2026 to be good. So that's that's my reasons. I don't think they're going to be quite as good. I think that other teams in the SEC are going to be able to get pressure on them, and I don't think they're going to be able to take that next step offensively. I think Marcel Reed will be really, really good, but I just don't know how confident I am in them. I think Florida is going to be better than people think. I think Alabama is going to be good. I think Georgia is going to be good. I think LSU is going to be good. I just don't. And then let's go. Yeah, I mean their schedule, the schedule for Texas A&M, really as well. I know is tough. So the SEC is a freaking brutal schedule. I mean it's hard. I mean, so you have to really be unbelievable in all facets of the game, and I'm not sure how they're going to be on the offensive line. So their schedule, real quick, the Texas A&M schedule, they've got Kentucky at LSU, they play at Alabama, at South Carolina. They play, so their last 4 games are at South Carolina, Tennessee, at Oklahoma, and Texas. So those are some tough games. Those last 3 are really going to be really difficult. They play out. I mean, even the 4th with South Carolina, they may not consistently be good, but it's hard to play in Columbia. Then you got at OU and Tennessee and Texas at home. So that's a pretty, and then like I said, they've got LSU mixed in there. So I just think that LSU is going to be better than them. I think that Alabama is probably going to be better than them. I mean, Oklahoma and Texas, I think that both those teams are going to be better than them. Now they're going to get a couple of those games. I'm not saying they're not, but I just don't see A&M being like I think they're going to finish 5th, 4th in the SEC. They're not going to be one of the top teams on the country, in my opinion. So that's why I have them as my second overrated team in 2026 is the Aggies. Let's move on to my third overrated team in 2026, and that is the Ole Miss Rebels. Why? Well, everybody knows that Lane Kiffin left and went to LSU. Why is Ole Miss overrated in 2026? They lost their coach. Pete Golden is the new coach at Ole Miss. They lost some of their best players. Prince Will, I can't even pronounce his last name. The outstanding edge for Ole Miss, who was unbelievable, who with 9 sacks last year. Prince Will Unmilan. My pronunciation is horrible. He went to LSU, followed Kiffin, as well as TJ Daugherty went to LSU as well, who was a linebacker for Ole Miss. And so they sorry, apologize about that. So yeah, but they got a couple players leaving as well. Stribling, the receiver from Ole Miss, is going to the NFL draft. Their offensive lineman, Diego Pounds, is going to the NFL draft. Caden Lee went to Missouri. Um, they did get some really good players back. They got Trinidad Chambliss back after going to court with in Ole Miss and getting the guy that graduated from Ole Miss, and they thought people thought that he was not going to elect Trinidad Chambliss to have another year at Ole Miss after graduating. Come on now. I mean, everybody knew that he was going to say, "Yeah, we need to get him another a year so we can get that you know playoff push going back." But I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think Trinidad Chambliss is outstanding. He's my second best quarterback in 2025. I just don't think he's going to have enough help. I don't. Pete Golden is not Lane Kiffin. Pete Golden is a good coach. I don't trust Pete Golden as much as I trust Lane Kiffin. Obviously, I just don't think Pete Golden's going to be able to take this team. I think they're going to take a step back. They lost a lot of talent. They lost their coach. They got a couple good players back. Like I said, Trinidad Chambliss, Kawan Lacey. They got some linebackers as well with Satirion Perkins, and they got receiver Jatiah Cook from Syracuse, but that guy has been transferring around a lot and he's had some trouble off the field. So it'll be interesting to see if he's able to, stay on the field and be healthy and that type of thing. But there's just so many variables that go into Ole Miss this year. They're not going to be better than LSU. Now they may beat them in the game, but I just don't know how they. I just think it's going to be like Trinidad and Quan Lacey and everybody else. I think they'll be good on offense, but defensively, I am very concerned. And I know Pete Golden's a defensive guy. I'm still concerned. They lost two of their best players, both went to LSU. Yes, they got some guys in the transfer portal, but I just don't know how they're going to replace that with all the coaches leaving. They lost the offensive coordinator, went to LSU with Lane Kiffin. So it's just, I don't think that they're going to be, I think they're going to take a step back. They may win 8 games. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I'd be shocked if they're a playoff team. Quote it right here, pin it, screen record it. If this comes back in a year and they're in the playoffs, so be it. I will come on this podcast and admit that I was wrong, but I don't think I will be. So moving on, let's talk about some of the teams that are going to be on the underrated list in 2026. I've got 3 teams for this, and this is going to be number 1 is going to be the Georgia Bulldogs. I have the Georgia Bulldogs as being one of my top underrated teams in 2026. And you may say, why are they underrated? It's Georgia. People are overlooking Georgia because everybody's talking about Texas. Everybody's talking about LSU. Everybody's talking about, is Alabama going to be back? Everybody's talking about Ohio State. Everybody's talking about Michigan. How are they going to be? People are talking about Oregon, Notre Dame. Like, those are the teams people are talking about. It's Kirby Smart, guys. Kirby Smart. I don't care if they're not as talented as some of the other teams. It's Kirby Smart. He is an outstanding coach. I think they're going to fly under the radar. You're going to look up. They're going to be in the second round of the playoffs again. And I think this is the year. Gunnar Stockton's back. They got another year of him. They got some good players coming in. So they returned 17 starters overall. 4 of their offensive linemen are back. They get Nate Frazier back. The big thing is they lost a couple really, really, really good players at the receiver position, so they'll have to replace that. But they've got a good offensive line. Their defense is going to be back. They were young on defense last year. They were young pretty much everywhere last year. Gunnar Stockton was a first-year quarterback. They'll have him back. They're going to have a new transfer in Arminius Williams from Auburn, who's an edge. They've got Khalil Barnes coming in from Clemson, who's outstanding. He's a really good player. I've watched him play a lot. They've got London Humphreys back in the receiver room. They've got Gentry Williams, a corner from Oklahoma, coming in. They've got Dante Dowell, a running back from Kentucky, who's 225 pounds, more of a power guy. Lawson Lucky's back. So this is a loaded Georgia team. They're going to have to find their true number one receiver. That's going to be my biggest concern is the receiver room. That's the number one thing I'm concerned about. But I do think it's Georgia. They'll figure it out. They're going to run that football, run the play action, run Gunnar Stockton, play great defense. And I just think that the Georgia Bulldogs are going to be one of the best teams in the country in 2026. I'm really high on them. I could see them beating Texas. I could see them really making a push. This may be their year. Gunnar Stockton's back. I think he's a dog. I think he'll do anything he can to win. I think he's unselfish. I think that he is not the most talented quarterback in the country, but I do think he is extremely clutch. And I just believe in him and Kirby Smart. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. I think Georgia's going to be one of the best teams in the country, and they're one of my top underrated teams in 2026. Moving on, we've got another one, the Houston Cougars. You're going to call me crazy. This is out of left field. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. We don't really watch a whole lot of Houston football. But one thing everybody knows, they got money in Texas, folks. They got a lot of it too. So they have got Connor Wegman back, who was a quarterback at Texas A&M a couple years ago. They had a really good 2025. They got even more money in NIL. They've got their big three back, which is Connor Wegman, Amir Thomas at receiver, and their defensive end, Khalil Lafay. Year 3 under Will Fritz. They've got a running back transfer from Tulane and Mekhi Hughes. They've got Trent Walker from Oregon State, who's a receiver in the portal. They got Mizzou Takarangi from Arizona in the portal. This team is going to be pretty good. And here's the thing, too. Their schedule is a cakewalk. Absolute cakewalk. That's what I've been basing a lot of this off of scheduling, too. So when you say overrated, underrated, that's where I'm getting their toughest games. Houston's toughest games are I got Baylor at Texas Tech on September 19th. That's going to be a tough one. At Utah and at West Virginia. Those are their toughest games. I mean, they've got money, they've got good coaching, they've got a lot of their best players are back. I'm a Houston I'm buying stock in Houston. I just am. I just think that they're going to be good. I actually think that Connor Wegman's a really good player. Um, I think that he can throw the ball down the field and complete passes and make the right decisions. So I think that he's a little bit underrated, and he could wheeze his way into the second round of the draft going into the next year. So I'm a believer of Houston, and I think that they are going to be one of the top teams that are underrated in 2026. I could see them sneaking in top 10 in the country in 2026. So they're going to be on my list. My other list, my other last team is the Louisville Cardinals. They had a really good year in 2025, and I expect them to be pretty good in 2026. They are getting a new quarterback. They got a new quarterback from Ohio State, Lincoln Keenholtz, who is a backup at Ohio State, former 4-star. He battled last year for the starting role, played in some games, played well, but he was the backup. So he's going to be the quarterback for Louisville. And you got to think about this, guys. Last year, Louisville went 9-4. They did go 4-4 in the ACC, but they are a pretty good team. And their coach is, I think he's a dang good coach. He was targeted by a lot of other schools in the offseason, but decided, I think, to stay at Louisville. That's Jeff Brom. But he was born and played in he played at Louisville. So I don't think he's really wanting to go anywhere. And they've got a manageable schedule again. So, I mean, being in the ACC, their schedule is going to be easier. So I think that this is another reason that these two teams that I've got for underrated, um, largely is because, or some of that is because of their schedule. Um, Louisville's toughest games are going to be SMU and Georgia Tech. Well, I take that back. They open with Ole Miss in Nashville on September 6th. So that'll be, if they win that game, and I think that Ole Miss is not going to be as good as people think they are. So if they win that game, they're setting up for a pretty good year, if they can keep everything in line. But I'm just high on Louisville. They got Lincoln Keenholz, like I said. They've got Isaac Brown at running back. They've got Stankin Clark um, at linebacker. Gerard Smith is a defensive lineman from Kentucky. His brother Jacob Smith joined him as well. They lost Miller Moss last year. We already talked about that a little bit. Lincoln Keenholz has taken over. They lost a defensive end, Ashton Gillette. He's one of the team's best players. They also lost Chris Bell, one of the best receivers on their team. But they got their newcomers are pretty good as well. They got a receiver from Vanderbilt, Trey Richardson, the running back from Missouri, Marquise Davis, safety from Iowa, Crowan Intringer, and another receiver from Miami, Zywayne McCoy. So they spent some money in the offseason getting some players to their team. So yeah, I mean, I'm high on them. I think their schedule is, like I said, manageable. I think Keenholz is a good player. I think he's underrated. I do. This is probably one of the biggest reasons I'm high on Louisville is because of Lincoln Keenholz. I think he was at Ohio State, and he'd probably be starting for 60 to 70% of FBS, Power Four schools. But he was at Ohio State, and the guy in front of him is extremely good, and he just got beat out. And I think that he's going to be really good under Jeff Brom's system. I think he's better than Miller Moss. I think he's a step up from Miller Moss. I think he's got better legs. I think he can run more. He's going to be able to do more on the zone read game and kind of do more when plays break down and can kind of create a little bit more. Miller Moss is more of a pocket passer, and I think that Keenholz has high upside. We'll have to see how he does in year one, but that's one of the reasons I'm high on Louisville is because of the upside and the scheduling for the Cardinals. And those are my underrated and overrated teams for 2026. John Baylor's the underrated and overrated teams. Let's see how it works out. Am I wrong? Am I right? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to have any connections or any feedback from anybody, whether they think I'm wrong or right. If they have any suggestions or anything they could add would be greatly appreciated. Let's jump into like some breaking news here for current college football. We've got the Alabama spring game this Saturday, Colorado spring game this Saturday at 3, Mississippi State's spring game, Syracuse's spring game, and Stanford's spring game, or the spring games for Saturday, the 11th. That is Alabama, Colorado, Mississippi State, Syracuse, and Stanford are in the spring games for this weekend. Let's talk about this. Spring football is coming to a close over the next couple weeks, and the one window rule is here for 2026. And just a reminder, under the previous rules, it was stated where players could transfer after the spring practice and go to different schools. So it made coaches kind of like weary, like, do I announce a starter? Because if I announce a starter, then my backup may leave after spring practice and go somewhere else. So a lot of coaches were not announcing a starter until after the deadline. So they removed that. They removed that to where there's one portal window, and that was after the season from January 2nd to January 16th. So there is not another portal window after spring ball, which is a good thing. I agree with this. This is a good move. Now, there are exceptions to that. If your coach leaves in those scenarios, then you get to transfer. But those are specific situations for specific teams and players. So this is a good thing, a step in the right direction. It does not solve everything, but it stops the bleeding for a little bit. It gives coaches a more certified stamp of who my roster is going to be and who I can depend on so they can plan for the season and they're not like trying to scrounge up guys on the back end because one of their better backups that they were relying on for depth left. So that was not a good rule. I'm glad they changed it. There's one window for the transfer portal. You know, it is what it is. So that will be a good thing for the coaches. And that is it for the Sports Tavern show for today on Tuesday. And so if you've got any concerns, questions, please show them out. I'd like any recommendations. I really want to help grow this channel and really just talk as authentic as I can about college football and break down anything for the game. I've got a lot of opinions about what is good for college football, like we've talked about, and I do think this spring portal window is a good thing. I'm just excited for the season, and let's do it, guys. Thanks for watching.